In this video, we'll see how can we separate cream from milk. Solid particles in a liquid are very small and passes through a filter paper. Now, for these particles, the filtration techniques cannot be used for the separation. So, such mixtures can be separated by centrifugations. Such mixture can be separated by centrifugations. So centrifugation process is used to separate a solid particle which is very small in size present in a liquid. So, what is centrifugation? In the centrifugation process, the particles are rotated quickly through a machine called centrifugating machine. When we put high rotation in the centrifugating machine, the particles collide one another and start carrying charges, and they combine to form a bigger particles. So the particle, when it is bigger, then it becomes heavier. So heavier particles are forced to settle down and lighter particles stay at the top, and such technique are used to separate the heavier particle and the lighter particles. This process is called as a centrifugation. So let us see about the applications of this process, that is centrifugations. Centrifugation techniques are used in diagnostic laboratories for blood and urine tests, and it also can use in dairies and home to separate butter from cream, and it is also used in washing machine to squeeze out water from wet clothes. So these are the uses of centrifugations in our daily life. Now we will see how can we separate a mixture of two immiscible liquids. So immiscible means which cannot make a clear solution. That means there should be a distinct layer. So such a mixtures, this have difference in densities. So if difference in densities means they will make a separate layer. So we can separate such a mixture by using a separating funnel. In the separating funnel, we have a stop cock here. So when you put the solution in the separating funnel, this is separating funnel. When you put the solution, then there should be a separate layer. If you open the stop cock, the heavier layer will be flow down. When it reaches to the upper layer column, then you close the vessel, then you will separate like this. So this is what we call as a separation by separating funnels, which is used to separate two immiscible liquids. Now let us see the uses of this separating funnel or application of this separating funnel. To separate a mixture of oil and water, we use separating funnel. Again, in the extraction of iron from its ore, the lighter slag particles are removed from the top by this method to leave the molten iron at the bottom of the furnace. In this techniques we use the principle of immiscible liquids separate out in layer depending on the densities. Means we use the difference of densities as a techniques. So you need to understand what is the technique used in this separating funnel. Now we can see it again. How can we separate a mixture of salt and ammonium chloride? Here your salt is non-volatile and ammonium chloride is volatile. So we can say that how we can separate a mixture of volatile and non-volatile substance. For this you need to do your process of sublimations. What is sublimation? Sublimation is the process of separating two substances, which one is volatile, another one is non-volatile, by heating up to this melting point. When we heat it, then the one which have lower melting point will be evaporated and deposit on the cold part of the funnel, and the one which have higher melting point remains on the vessel. Like this we can separate it. Here your ammonium chloride is is a volatile substances. So when we heat it, then ammonium chloride goes and deposit on the this wall of this funnel, and your sodium chloride remains in the vessel. So like this, we can separate a mixture of volatile and non-volatile substance. Non-volatile substance you will get as a sublimate, as a residue. Non-volatile substance you will get as a residue in the vessel, whereas volatile substance you will get as a sublimate on the this conical flask. So this is what the technique of your sublimation. Like this one, we can see it how to separate a mixture of dyes. Now this, in this technique we need to use chromatography. For chromatography we use a paper. So in the paper we make a spot, and then we dip into the this color solution. The different substances have different capability of absorption. This is the principle used in chromatography. So it will absorb at different layer, then you can wash it and undergo this evaporation, then you will get the color. So like this we can separate. So chromatography is the technique used for the separation of color substances, for the separation of color substance. So what is chromatography means? Chromatography is the technique used for separation of colored materials. So colored materials can be removed from the mixture by using chromatography techniques. If in the chromatography techniques, if you use paper, then we call as a paper chromatography. If you use column, then it is called as a column chromatography. Like this, different techniques are there. Now let us see what are the applications of chromatography. Chromatography is used to separate colors in the dye, or pigments from the natural colors, and drugs from blood. These are the uses of your chromatography techniques. Now let us see how can we separate a mixture of two miscible liquid. So two miscible liquids which have different boiling point can be separated by distillation. While distillation process undergo, then during the time those which have lower boiling point boil first and goes into vapor, and it passes through this column, and here this is the condenser. Through this condenser, when the gases comes through this condenser, then it becomes condensed to form liquid. So those which have lower boiling point will get in the vessel, and those which have higher boiling point is in the this distillating flask. So like this one we can separate a mixture of two miscible liquids which have different boiling point. If the difference of boiling point is very less, then we need to use fractional distillation. So we know that distillation is used for the separation of components of a mixture containing two miscible liquid that boils without decomposition and have sufficient difference in the boiling point. If it is less than 25 Kelvin, then fractional distillation process is used. So you must remember the difference of the boiling point between the two miscible liquid is less than 25 Kelvin, then simple distillations cannot work to separate. Instead, we need to use fractional distillation. So like this we will have. So in the fractional distillation, different column provide different temperature, thereby in the different column you can get different substances. So next, how can we obtain different gases from air? Let us see it. First, air then compress and cool by increasing pressure and decreasing temperature. Then it gives out your liquid air, and then this liquid air allow to warm up slowly in a fractional distillation column. As I was told that in the distillation column different temperatures are maintained, so your oxygen you will get it in when the temperature reaches to 18 minus 183 degrees Celsius, and argon you will get it in minus 186 degrees Celsius. Nitrogen you will get it at 196 minus degrees Celsius. So the percentage of this oxygen present in air is 20.9, and your argon is 0.9, and your nitrogen is 78.1. So by using this one we can separate out the mixtures of this air. Now we'll see it, how can we obtain pure copper sulfate from impure sample. For this you need to use the term crystallization. That means crystallization techniques we need to use. Crystallization method is used to purify solid. Crystallization method is used to purify solid. So first we need to remove the impurities. So crystallization is the process to separate. Crystallization is the process to separate a pure solid in the form of its crystal from the solution. Crystallization technique is better than the simple evaporation techniques. What are the advantages? Let us see it. Some solid decompose on heating to dryness. So this decomposition process should not be there in case of crystallization. And some impurities may remain dissolved in the solution even after filtration. So on evaporation, these contaminate the solid. That means first, for the evaporation process, first we need to dissolve the impure crystal in water, and after then reduce the volume till up to saturation. After reducing the volume till up to saturation, then the solution keep without disturbance, keep in the cold places, then automatically your crystal will be formed inside the solution. So if you have done this evaporation, then you need to boil it till up to the dryness. So during the time heat is more, thereby your crystal start decomposition. But in case of evaporation, we cannot make the solution up to dry. Only we make to reduce the volume into 1/3 of its original volume. Then only some liquids are also there. So automatically in concentrated part, the solid molecules start attraction to one another, thereby it will form a solid slowly. But it is a slow process. So heat is less, thereby it cannot burn up your crystal, and that means it cannot decompose the crystals. That is why you will get pure crystal in case of crystallization process, then your evaporation process. So let us see the applications of this crystallization process. Purification of salt, as we have already know that it is used for the purification of salt, and separation of crystals of your potassium. From this part also we can use the process of crystallization. Now we will see the next part, that is physical and chemical sense. Physical and the chemical sense. Before going to this physical and chemical sense, we will see about your textual question. Question number 1: how will you separate a mixtures containing kerosene and petrol? Now the difference in their boiling point is more than 25 degrees Celsius, which are miscible with each other. So your technique which you need to use is fractional distillation, we can say. So again in question number 2, name the technique to separate butter from curd. Butter and curd, that means we have already discussed this one. So difference of densities, that means you can use your centrifugation process. Next, salt from seawater, so you can use crystallization process. And camphor from salt, here you can use your sublimation process. In question number 3, name the type of the mixtures are separated by the technique of crystallization. So here you can use to purify the crystals, you can say. Or what are the types of mixture, means that mixtures having one of difference of solubility, you can say. That type of mixtures can be separated by crystallizations. So now physical and chemical changes. Physical and the chemical changes. The interconversion of state. The interconversion of state is a physical change. Because changes occurs without the change in the composition and no change in chemical nature of the substances. So physical changes, in physical changes there is no new substances formed, and there is no change in the chemical compositions of the substances. If chemical compositions of the substances are changes, then it is called as a chemical change. So in a chemical change brings the change in the chemical composition of the matter and nature of the substances. So this is what the difference between physical and the chemical changes.